Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Welcome back, chaps. This week we're very excited to be joined by Jim Hyde from RawHyde Adventures out in the west of America. Jim runs RawHyde Adventures, which is a riding school like no other. They organise training and trips and events across the cowboy states of America, and it looks amazing. So we thought it'd be good to catch up with Jim, find out what they do, how they do it, where they do it, and everything else. It's a good one. Oh, one more thing. You may have seen already that we've announced the finalists for the TAMP Podcast Awards 2024. So if you haven't already, please jump on our socials, find the link, and go and vote for the finalists in our 2024 awards. There are 16 categories this year, not quite so many as last year, but the feedback we get from it is that they've actually been really useful. Now, I've bought a stack of stuff off award winners and award nominations, so we kind of hope we're providing a service to you, the listener, as well. And it's a bit of fun. We get to present the awards at the Lightweight Adventures Festival in July. We're all going to dress up again this year and drink some beer and have a laugh. Be good to see you there. Right, let's get on with it.
We're a multifaceted business. We run the BMW Off-Road Rider Training Academy, and we have I don't know how you look at land in Great Britain, but we have 2,500 acres here. That is our playground.
That is our country, basically.
Yeah.
Very restricted where we can and can't go, certainly on our motorbikes. Obviously, it's a pretty small island. My normal co-host is a guy called Noel, who's away in Portugal at the moment on a bike trip, which is great because it means we'll have something to talk about. So I've got my friend Andrew, commonly known as Seats. Andrew Seaton.
Hi.
He's a very cool guy. He's one of the guys that dangles out of helicopters rescuing people.
Pretending to rescue people.
Jim, you're very welcome to the podcast. Jim Hyde, all the way from the west coast of America somewhere. I'm sure you'll tell us who you are, where you are, and tell us why we're talking to you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on for number one. So my name is Jim Hyde. I'm the owner of a company called RawHyde Adventures. We're based loosely in Los Angeles, California. For the last 22 years, we have been deeply involved in the world of what we call adventure riding, which mostly circulates around motorcycles that are larger than 650 cc's. That's basically our world. We are one of a handful of officially authorized BMW training centers in the world, and we've been an official partner with BMW for 16 years now. We use training as a platform to introduce people to the world of travel. That's really our thing, is prepare people for actually going out and seeing the world on their motorcycles. And as I'm sure you guys know, the bulk of the world's roads are unpaved, and that's our story. Get people ready to travel, hopefully inspire them to travel. And we also run tours a whole bunch of tours in South America. I am launching my first foray into Europe in exactly 1 week. We have a tour we're calling the SPAM Tour. Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. So that's my first attempt to get into the European market. Largely, we're focused in travel in America and preparing people for the road less traveled.
You've certainly chosen the right destinations to travel into Europe and obviously venture into Africa as well. 3 fantastic places to ride. But Jim, we're often accused of big bike bias. So this is part of our we're trying to redeem ourselves by talking more about big bikes. So we've got 2 big bike fans on the podcast today. We've got Jim from LA and we've got Andrew Seaton, who's been on the podcast before. He's actually wearing his big bike wanker t-shirt. He doesn't need a big bike just to be a wanker. But again, Noel is still on a trip. He's in Portugal at the moment on his little bike. We're delighted to have you, Jim. Thanks a lot for joining us. I guess it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit more about you as well. So tell us how you got into bikes. A lot of people have a bike story about their dad's getting them into riding bikes. How did bikes come across for you?
Mine's kind of an opposite to the normal story. My mother and father both proclaimed that motorcycles were the invention of the devil. Anytime I brought up the topic of a motorcycle, which I've always been fascinated with, but anytime I brought it up, mostly my mother, would tell me some horror story about someone she had heard of that lost a leg in a motorcycle accident or had slid down the highway at 50 miles an hour and they spent agonizing hours picking the pebbles out of their back and things like this. And so when I was 17 years old, I traded something that is probably not real common in the UK. We have out here where there's a desert, we have what we call desert buggies. Typically some sort of a tubular frame vehicle in the old days with a Volkswagen engine in the back with big tires.
Dune buggy.
Dune buggy, yeah. And I traded that dune buggy with a buddy of mine who had a little Yamaha 125. We both knew that we'd get in trouble for the trade, so I kept the dune buggy at my house, and he kept the motorcycle at his house. And whenever we wanted to play with our toys, we went over to each other's houses and took off. And that worked out great for about 3 months until our parents figured out what was going on. And I was then told that that guy would never drive my dune buggy again, and I was told by his parents I couldn't show up and go riding on the dirt bike. And then somehow 25 years slid by, and I didn't actually get into motorcycling until I was in my 40s. You know, career and all that sort of stuff. And then one day I was in Europe, in the Dolomites, actually, on a wine tasting tour. We drove through the Dolomites, and what a spectacular part of this world. And I just got the bug. I'm like, I need to come back here and ride a motorcycle through this region. I came home and called my travel agent and asked her if she could find me some company that could either rent me or take me on a tour that went through that region. That's what happened. I signed up with a company called Beach's Motorcycle Adventures. I don't know how popular they are in the UK, but they're an American company that does European tours. And so I signed up for one of their tours after clarifying which tour would go through the Dolomites. At that point, I had managed to get myself a motorcycle license, although I wasn't super experienced at this point in time. This was like 1998. I show up for the tour, and the guy that was running the trip said that I hadn't specified what kind of a motorcycle I wanted to ride. So he was going to give me a GS because they were ugly and nobody else wanted to ride them. And I said, okay, I don't really care. I know a little bit about these things. They're like the Jeep of the motorcycle world. And to be honest with you guys, that's where it all began. I never had more fun doing anything in my life than roaming around Europe through beautiful places and staying in nice hotels and hanging out with cool people. And that GS was brand new when he gave it to me. I fell in love with the idea of motorcycling, and I did have a chance to try and do a little off-road exploring on the GS when we were in northern Italy, because as you guys know, there's not a lot of good off-roading in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. I started up this narrow little road that went up on, looked like it led me to the top of a mountain, and I quickly realized that a 575-pound GS was a whole lot different than that little Yamaha 125 I had when I was 17. I decided that I didn't want to risk damaging the bike and the embarrassment that would come from that, so I turned around, vowed to become both a better rider and to learn how to handle the big bikes, because I really was digging the smoothness of the GS, the power that it had, its street manners, and I knew that it could be handled well off-road if you knew what you were doing. As the tour evolved, I found myself being a little envious of the guy that was running the trip. He was the owner. His name was Rob Beach. And I'm like, man, all this guy does is ride motorcycles and hang out with cool people and go to cool places. And I'd love to figure out if I could do that for myself. I came home from that trip inspired not only to become a better motorcycle rider, but to see if I could figure out a way to get into the world of backcountry travel. As you mentioned, we started off as a Jeep company because the American West is an amazing place to explore. And my original vision for RawHyde had been to work with Europeans, specifically folks from Great Britain and the Germans, because one of my playgrounds is Death Valley National Park, which is which is America's second largest national park. And it gets hellishly hot there in the summertime. And if you go to Death Valley in the middle of summer, you hear two foreign accents. You hear British and you hear German.
Jim, you're going to hear mine in August and September. We're having a family holiday on the West Coast, and we are going to be traveling through Death Valley. Apparently, it's going to be a bit warm.
137 degrees Fahrenheit. You guys are masochists.
We're going to be in a car with aircon, right?
That's up to you. But anyway, make a long story short, the little unfortunate thing that happened on September 11th of 2001 kind of killed our Jeep business for the Brits. You guys may know of a company, it's a British company called Red Letter Days.
Yeah, still quite big. You can buy vouchers from a newsagent.
I had a contract with Red Letter Days for 400 customer days per year of Jeep travel, mostly in Death Valley and some other points in the American West, and September 11th killed the whole deal. I got this very polite email from the guys at Red Letter Days, and they were like, so sorry, old chap, about that unfortunate thing, but we don't think the British public would like to travel to America right now, so we're going to bow out. Anyway, make a really long story short, we got into the motorcycle business. It took us a few years to really get some traction, but we did capture the attention of BMW because it's really an important part of BMW's philosophy that if you're going to buy a bike like a GS, in order to really get the most enjoyment out of it, you need how to use it both ways, on-road and off-road. They've got training schools all over the world, and we became one in 2008, and here we are today.
Bikers generally, I've not met many bikers that I didn't like, but in your job, you meet a lot of people, but motorcyclists are good people, right, generally?
Absolutely. I'll tell you a funny story, which I'm sure will resonate in a certain sense, but I was reluctant to want to work with Americans in a business that is inherently dangerous. And you might ask, well, why is that? Culturally, we have a problem in America, and that is that you slip and fall in a grocery store, you sue the grocery store because the floor was too slippery. You fall over a cliff in a national park, you sue the state because they didn't build the wall high enough that you couldn't climb over it and fall to your death. And I was terrified of being sued by the American public in an environment that is inherently risky. And I have been delighted to find that the people who embrace the idea of venturing off the pavement and getting the hell out into the boondocks are very self-responsible people. We've had a wonderful experience, and to your point, absolutely, the people that choose to do this are the best part of the whole game. They're good people, and we've had a blast and made some wonderful friends over the past 22 years.
Who are your customers? What sort of people are coming to RawHyde to learn to ride the big bikes?
All walks of life, but typically based on the price point of the big bikes, we're serving people who have at least begun hitting their stride professionally. Demographically, 40 to 70, typically fairly well-to-do. I guess, if you had to put an income statement on it, people that are making $100,000 a year or more are typically our customers, but we also get the occasional mechanic or carpenter who is just in love with the idea of exploring. And it's all walks of life, all professions, but typically there's a lot of gray hair in our sport.
That's why Seats has got a hat on, I'm assuming.
It's because you rent out GSs, surely.
That's the thing, though. It's an expensive bike, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at minimum of 18 grand for the new 1300,
yeah,
maybe more.
And with accessories and the premium package and the cross spoke wheels, you're pushing 23,000.
I can't remember who coined the phrase, but reassuringly expensive. You offer a high level of service as well. I've heard you talking before about the quality of the food and the drink and the accommodation you provide as well.
There are more and more people that call themselves trainers in our space. So we try to set ourselves apart by being unique and owning our own facilities. So yeah, we provide turnkey hospitality. If you come to take a class with us, we have our own accommodations. We have a 22-person bunkhouse, reminiscent of perhaps a military bunkhouse, but then we also have private rooms and cabins. Our chef, he doesn't have a Michelin star, but he's a Cordon Bleu graduate. We serve wine with dinners at night, and we try to provide a really fun, nice experience.
Talk us through what you do then. I know you do offer a number of different things. It's not just training and it's not just tours. Tell us about all the things that you do offer.
From a training standpoint, we have 4 different levels of rider training. We've got basic introductory stuff for a guy that rides a Harley and wants to start getting into the dirt. Then we have what we call Intro Plus, which is just a little more challenging. Then we have our 3rd level of training we call Next Step. The idea really there is the first 2 levels of training are just to get guys comfortable riding basic dirt roads. This level 3 class, again, here in the U.S., I don't know the language, the cultural language of Great Britain, but when you go from a road that's all dirt and flat or perhaps graveled to a Jeep trail, we call that a twin track. So the level 3 class is aimed at putting guys into a twin track where there's no maintenance. So you have no idea what's coming up. There may be a tree that's fallen down. There may be big ruts. There may be rocks or rock ledges that you have to crawl over. So really it's challenging. So level 3 is to set guys up for technical riding. And then level 4 is a preparedness class for world travel. We do a 5-day real-world adventure where we take them out into Death Valley on a very, very, very tough road where mostly they need help to get through. And we always encourage people to ride in groups if they can, or at least with a buddy. And at the same time, we teach them navigational skills, basic trail maintenance skills, how to change or repair tires, basic first aid, communication, satellite communication options, things like this. So trying to set them up for everything else that they need to travel the world.
In my real full-time job, the one that pays the mortgage, I do big IT training programs. So I actually have a look earlier today at your contents of your different courses, and I like the look of them because you broke everything down into very small constituent parts, and there was a nice sequence and a nice flow. Do this first. Once you've got the throttle and clutch control, we can then move on to balance and all that kind of thing. And it just seemed to flow in a very nice, logical way. And I guess you've evolved that over the years, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I put a lot of thought into it. I wasn't actually a very good rider when I thought about creating a training school. My one advantage at that point was I could serve really good food and we had a really nice facility. Because, gentlemen, you only need to know 10% more than your students to be perceived as an expert. So that's how we started. But I took everything that I struggled with learning and I broke it into steps. And so we call our curriculum, we call them stepping stone curriculums, so that, as you pointed out, you master one skill and then you move up to the next one, but you have to continue to use what you learned previously as you move forth through the curriculum.
Seats, you do a lot of training, don't you?
It's a very similar process that we employ for training as well. So we call them slightly different things.
Not everybody will know what you do.
Everybody will know Ollie Moto and the hero that hangs out of helicopters. So I effectively teach those skills to the military. For the military.
Next time he does it, could you cut his rope off, maybe, just to teach him a lesson?
I quite like the guy.
Okay, don't do that then.
So we break things down into key learning points, so a very similar strategy, and you're building on those foundations throughout as you progress.
You offer tours as well, right, Jim? There's tours and some events as well?
We do. We do some special events, but tours, and that's the thing that if there was any one thing that I hoped the British public might be interested in is some of our Western American tours. We have a Death Valley intensive, so 5 days roaming around Death Valley. We call it the Mojave Magic Adventure. It's actually not all Death Valley, but it's the Mojave Desert of which Death Valley is part of. Then we have a trip that we call the Best of the West, and it begins at our main facility in Los Angeles. And we go out to Death Valley for one night, and then we go to Las Vegas. Then we go to the Grand Canyon. From the Grand Canyon, we go to Monument Valley, Utah. From there to Colorado, go over the great high mountain passes of the Continental Divide, and we end up at our location in Colorado. Sounds like you like the idea of that one.
When are those available?
We do it twice a year. In all honesty, it's our least expensive tour because we created the tours to move our motorcycle fleet from California to Colorado for our summer season, and then returning back from Colorado to California in the fall. The return trip is a little different than the outbound. We follow the mining history of the American West. From our facility in Colorado, We go over a road called the Road to Riches, which is it's a dirt road over the Continental Divide and the Rocky Mountains into Leadville, Colorado. From Leadville, we go to Moab, Utah, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Moab, but it's amazing. But it's also a uranium mining location. There's a huge uranium mine there. And from there, the scenery is just astounding. Then we hit the loneliest road in America, which is Highway 50, which used to be a 300-mile stretch with not even a single gas station. We end up in Carson City, Nevada, which is the home of the largest silver strike in American history. And from there up to Lake Tahoe, and we meander through the Sierra Nevada mountains back to Los Angeles.
I can see Seats' face now, and we're both sitting there going, that sounds so good. So for context, Jim, and I don't know how much you know about off-road riding in the UK, but a day out for me, probably going to be 90 to 120 miles, maybe 40% off-road. The longest trail we have, we're very lucky where I live, there's one that's about 12 miles long and there's one that's about 7 miles long. But the rest of it, they're all less than half a mile or maybe a mile long. And you have to link them all together and you have to have fantastic knowledge to know where you can and you can't go legally. So what you've just described sounds like heaven.
When I can take you on a 200-mile day through some pristine forests, over beautiful mountain passes, scenery that will blow your mind, just the look on your face makes it all worthwhile to me.
I spent years flying over Southern America in the military, and you get to see the trails of Southern California, Utah, Arizona. The thought of riding them, special.
The vice president of marketing for BMW Corporate in Germany, based in Munich, was a fellow named Peter de Waal. Now, Peter was a South African fellow that had worked his way up through the ranks in BMW, but he had traveled all over the world. He was moved here to America for his last assignment as an employee of BMW. He was supposed to breathe a little bit of life into the BMW sales world here in America, and Peter was a big GS guy. And we became friends, and he helped us grow immensely in the 5 years that he was here. But he heard about a tour that we offer that we call the Continental Divide Tour. And I don't know if you saw it on our website, but it begins in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's 2,200 miles in length, riding the spine of the Rocky Mountains, 70 to 75% off-road, mostly on really decent roads. They're dirt roads, but they're maintained to some degree by the county. They'll pass a tractor through once a month. Astounding scenery. So New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana.
That's all the cowboy states. We need to go there.
It is, yeah.
If you're at all a history buff, there is a section in Wyoming where you can actually ride in the wagon tracks of what was called the Oregon Trail. And you're absolutely riding in the tracks of history. And you can do about it's kind of a British ride. It's a 10-mile ride in the wagon tracks. And then you have to get back on a dirt road that parallels the original trail. But just to take a moment and stand and think about what those pioneers back in the 1800s did, taking 3 months in a wagon, choking on dust, following each other, heading west to live a better life. It's amazing. We have something like 1.7 million miles of dirt roads, farm-to-market roads, Forest Service roads, fire roads, things like this, everywhere.
Have you had anybody that's turned up and you've said, you're not coming riding with us?
Oh, well, we have some criteria. If you're going to take like our follow-up ride to training, you have to pass training. And if somebody just doesn't have the skill set, we say, look, you're going to kill yourself. You're not ready for this yet. So take some more training or go practice or whatever. I can't say that I have some super interesting guy that we just said no. We've had trouble with clients. I mean, any business does. We've had those cowboys who would not listen to what we told them to do. We've had guys who rode dangerously and we had to kick them off tours. I had a guy who actually, we have a phrase we use here in the U.S., his cheese slipped off of his cracker.
I have no idea what that means.
I'm excited to find out.
We use that phrase for someone who is emotionally unstable. In situations of high stress, sometimes people lose it. I'm sure, Seats, in your world, when you're rescuing somebody, you get the ones who are calm and they follow your directions, and then you get the ones who are frantic and they can't help themselves. Well,
yes,
we had a guy, and I will not mention any names, but we were on a trip to Alaska. He lived here in Southern California, and the farther away from home we got, the stranger he became. Suddenly, he started addressing himself in the third person. And we go into this restaurant. When the waitress asked him what he wants to eat, rather than saying, "I would like a hamburger, please," he hunched himself up. He sat up straight in his chair. He put his hands in his lap like a little boy. And he said, "Bobby would like a cheeseburger, please." And from that moment on, he got weirder every day, to the point where one day he comes to me and goes, "Bobby would not like to ride his motorcycle today. Bobby would like to have his motorcycle put into the support truck, please." He was acting like a small child. So we put his bike in the truck and we said, "Sure, no problem." And Bobby was not his real name, by the way. About a mile down the road, he just blew up on my driver, screaming and yelling and frothing at the mouth. So my driver pulls over. I pull up behind him. My driver tells me what's happening. So I approach him. I'm like, "Bobby, I have a no shouting policy here at RawHyde. You can't yell at my people. If you have a problem," Bobby understands. Bobby was inappropriate. He gets back in the truck. 5 miles down the road, it happens again. I'm like, "Bobby, if you scream at my driver one more time, I am taking you to the airport tomorrow and you're flying home. You're clearly uncomfortable with the setting that we're in today, and you need to go home." Bobby understands. Well, 10 minutes later, it happened again. So I pulled him out of the truck. I said, "Listen, when we get to our hotel, we're packing your bags. I'm taking you to the airport. You got to go home. You got to figure it out. You're clearly, something's going on." He agreed. We got him to the hotel. The next morning, I said, "I will take you to the airport." I pick him up. We hop in the truck. I take him to the airport. He gets out of the truck with a big smile. He says, "Damn, Jim." He said, "I know I was weird, but I've had a great time."
Wow, he's fucking cheese has fallen off his cracker, that's for sure.
He lost the whole Bobby thing. And he flew home, and we hauled his motorcycle all the way back from Alaska. And when I saw him a few weeks later, when he came to pick up his bike, he was totally normal. He goes, "Man, I don't know what happened to me up there." He said, I just lost it. I was clearly kind of out of my comfort zone, but I really did have a blast. That was an eye-opening experience, and it was completely normal again." But Seats, to your question, that's probably the weirdest experience I've had with a client, other than a guy who almost got shot by a border guard in Argentina because he did not want to stop as he went from one country to another. He just hit the gas and hauled ass across the border. The guard was taking his rifle off of his shoulder, ready to take a shot at this guy, when somebody screamed at him that he was an old man with dementia and we can figure this out.
So there's a lot of celebrities in LA ride motorcycles, and you probably can't tell us specifically who they are, but do you ever get any A-list or B-list celebrities riding with you?
I can actually share a couple of stories. We have had Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie here. Angelina, a few years ago, filmed a movie called Salt. This was organized through BMW. They arranged for a private lesson for Brad and Angelina. And Angelina learned how to ride a 650. She only had to ride the thing for like 50 yards for the movie shot. So we spent a day with her. We've had a fellow named Chris Pine. He plays Captain Kirk in the Star Trek movie. Ziggy Marley, if you guys are reggae fans. We've had a few, but not a ton. Harrison Ford, however, rides a GS.
Are they good listeners? Were they happy to take instruction?
They were. Angelina had a few $1 million riding on the line, so she paid very careful attention. Chris Pine came on his own. He just wanted to learn how to ride adventure bikes, and he was super cool. Everybody was good. Even, Brad Pitt. I took him out personally for just a joyride because he's a motorcyclist. He said that's the only time he ever really feels comfortable in public is when he's riding a bike, because he's got his visor down and nobody knows who he is.
Favorite place to ride in America, or that you've ridden in America, and then favorite place outside of America?
Favorite place in America? I have to say, and if I could get your email addresses, I could send you a picture of this. There is a place in Moab, Utah called the Schaefer Switchbacks. The Schaefer Switchbacks are a fairly easy road, just wide enough for a Jeep. It is carved into the face of approximately, I would say, a 3,000-foot cliff. And this road switchbacks up and down the face of that cliff. The view is astounding. It is just absolutely magical. So that's my favorite place, I think, my moment here in America. And also, if you go on YouTube and Google the Schaefer switchbacks, there's a ton of videos up there. Secondly, in Chile, Argentina and Chile, right? Back in I guess it was the late 80s, the early 90s, there was a dictator that was running Chile named Pinochet. And Pinochet was very worried about Argentina attacking him. So he made a road that cut from Osorno, Chile, south. If you've heard of the Alcan Highway here in the U.S., it's the Alaska-Canada Highway. Same reason. We were worried in 1942 that the Japanese were going to attack America from Alaska. So we cut a military highway all the way through Canada. Pinochet did the same thing through southern Chile. And there is this dirt road. Sadly, they're slowly paving it, but a dirt road that goes for 1,500 miles along the coast of Chile. And it goes through virgin forests of these 1,000-plus-year-old trees. There are waterfalls, lakes, glaciers everywhere, along with a majestic coastline. It's just this long road going south, but the scenery is unbelievable. And it's called the Carretera Austral. It is ADV bike magic. When I first started RawHyde and I had this contract with Red Letter Days, I met with a fellow. He's one of the Red Letter Days contractors, and his business model, he called it adrenaline at 5 miles an hour. He had a bunch of Land Rovers, and he used what he was calling coffin trails. He was in Sherwood Forest, whatever the town is close to Sherwood Forest. Nottingham, yes. I went out and walked through Sherwood Forest one afternoon while I was there. Apparently, back in the days of the plague, nobody was quite sure what caused people to die. They just knew it was a terrible thing, and they were scared of the bodies, so they wouldn't allow the bodies to go through the villages on the way to the graveyard. So they had to go around the villages. So that probably ties to also these backcountry roads to get the bodies to the churches, which is, I guess, where the graveyards were. You had asked me about events as part of the portfolio of things that we do. So we do the training programs, we do have tours, but events are a couple times a year. We have an event we call Adventure Days, and that's really an educational event where we'll get 300 or 400 people that come in for a long weekend, usually Thursday night through a Sunday morning, and we host 50 or 60 different seminars on everything imaginable about riding in the backcountry. How to pack your luggage properly, how to communicate, navigational seminars, tire changing. We'll usually have a tire manufacturer come in and talk about their tires. We have 20 or 30 or 40 vendors, the companies that make luggage, the companies that make protective equipment for the bikes, riding suits, and they all do talks about their products and why they made them. There's usually a pretty interesting backstory about how luggage came about. Al's story is just a formative one. He bought a BMW and rode around the world, and the plastic luggage that came with the bike broke after 2 months, and he vowed when he got home he would make better luggage. So he did. Now that company's been around for 25 years, and we use their products, and they're awesome. Everybody's got a backstory. We invite all of these companies to come to our event to tell their story and hopefully win some customers over and just add value to the community.
Are you familiar with the Trans-Euro Trail? Are you going to be using some of those trails in Spain and Portugal?
So this very first trip that we're doing, we've partnered up with IMT, Iberian Moto Tours. They're they have an office in Malaga, Spain, which is where we're starting. I don't think we're using any of those, but I've heard about it, and I will come play on the Trans-European Trail.
And it's an amazing resource, and it's free to use, as are the BDI routes.
I have Googled it. I have looked at some of the tracks, and it looks super cool.
What are the top 3 tips or training tips that you give to big bike riders to give them the confidence to actually take their own bikes off the pavement?
We have a little talk we do called the top 5 issues that street riders typically have when they get into the dirt. We talk about, there's a thing called the hierarchy of competence. Have you ever heard of it?
I have, because I'm in the world of training. Yeah. Consciously unconscious. Yeah.
Exactly. So we talk about that because it's the fear of the great unknown. When somebody buys a $25,000 motorcycle and they ride down the street and they turn off into the dirt, suddenly everything feels different. The bike wobbles a little bit and it just feels a little uncertain. We typically try to tell people the first thing you have to do is relax, because people tense up. They hold on too tight. And then everything that the bike hits, I use the phrase, everything that happens to the bike happens to the rider, because they're holding on tight. Their muscles are tense. They tire quickly. They've just got to relax. We also say, look, you have to learn how to counterbalance the bike when you go into a turn. We talk about one of the most important things of turning is doing everything you can to keep your body's weight over the contact patch of the tire. Because when the bike's going down the road in a straight line, the contact patch is right in the center of the tire. But as you lean the bike into a turn, the contact patch rolls over a little onto the shoulder. And we talk about on the street, you counter steer. On the dirt, you counterbalance. So you put more weight on one side of the bike and you get your butt out on that side so that you're holding your weight over the contact patch. That's an important tip. And most importantly, what we strongly urge is stand up when you start to worry about what's in front of you. Because by standing up on the pegs, you're taking your weight off the seat. And the seat is the highest point on the bike where the bike can carry you. And you don't have a very good sense of balance when you're sitting. So when you stand up, intuitively, many times you'll kind of do the right thing with weight shifts and whatnot because you feel the pegs tilting under you or whatever. Standing up enables your body's natural ability to sense balance. To me, that's the single most important thing that we teach early on is just trust your instinct for balance and stand up on the damn pegs. One other tip is we see a lot of new novice riders, for whatever reason, they want to stare right in front of their front wheel because they want to micromanage their way around things that may be in front of them. And we're like, come on. If you're looking that close in and you're going 10 miles an hour, by the time you recognize there's something in front of you, you're going to hit it anyway. So just look up. Look ahead, look 50 meters ahead of you, 100 meters ahead of you, make your decisions then, and just keep going.
There we go. Perfect. Have you ever had any people turn up possibly on their own bike and after a little while go, no, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Backed away from it because they're worried about scratching their 25 grand motorcycle?
Usually it's not that. I have two kinds of people who come to me and say that. One we can usually save, and the others, they leave and they go away because they knew they were going to fail before they ever got here. We do have a lot of people who will express concern to a coach. They're like, oh, there's no fucking way I can do this. The coach says, no, you can, because you can tell in their mind, they're excited about it, but they're a little concerned. But then I have the other kind of guy. You may know this guy. We always do an orientation. When people arrive Friday night, we have a nice dinner. We do an orientation. We talk about what the weekend is going to be. And this guy will approach me alone. He won't do it in a public forum. He'll slide up sideways. He kind of comes shimmying in from the side and he'll go, hey, Jim, how many times do you think I'm going to drop my bike this weekend? And I say to myself, this guy's not going to make it. And 4 times out of 5, usually by noon on the first day, they'll come up and they kind of, their heads hanging and they're like, this just isn't for me. I'm going to go home. Thank you. And they leave because they knew before they ever got here, they were going to fail. And traditionally, some of those guys have failed at everything they've tried. I hate to say it, but there are people in life that just have the loser mentality and they're not willing to make the commitment to give it a chance. Now, the other guy who walks up to my coach with 5 or 6 other people are standing around and goes, there's no fucking way I can do this. He's going to make it because my coach is going to say, no. Come on, take a deep breath. Let's do this first. Let's ease you into the exercise. Let's skid first. And whatever it is, the guy who is willing to admit openly that he's a little worried about it, we can teach him. But the guy who doesn't want to talk about it in front of anybody else and has to come slinking in sideways to ask me a silly question like how many times is he going to drop his bike, he's the one that's going to struggle and most likely the one that's going to bow out.
It is hard. It is a hard sport, isn't it, really? Or a hard hobby, whichever way you want to put it. I still now, after riding for 20 odd years off-road, you get to some trails and you think, big step-up climb you've got to do. And it is pretty scary at times, but you just have to throw yourself at it, don't you? That's what you do, Seats, right?
That's it. Just throw yourself at it.
Literally.
And we tell people, you can't have any ego or pride involved in this. You're going to drop your bike and get over it. And it's better to drop your bike than it is to risk blowing out your knee trying to save a bad situation. Just let it go. To take the sting off of that, we tell people, listen, you drop your bike, honk your horn, and everybody else honks their horn too. Let's celebrate the fall. And then stand up, put your foot on the bike like Captain Morgan. Let's get a picture. You dropped your bike. Now let's move on.
Can you sign a collision damage waiver, Jim, with your bikes?
We offer our own insurance policies. You can buy a damage waiver. Yes, you can. 99% of the people, you get a couple scratches, but you don't damage your bikes.
You always run the latest BMWs, don't you? You seem to change your fleet fairly frequently.
We get new bikes every year, both because we're a very good marketing department for BMW. There's no better test ride than come in and do something like this for a weekend and spend 3 days riding a brand new BMW. Sadly, we know that we've cost our customers a lot of money because they go buy these things 1 out of 5 statistically.
Really? That's incredible.
That's incredible. Yeah.
We do surveys with our clients both immediately after camp and then 1 year after they've been with us. We send them hey, what are you doing these days? Did you buy a new bike? Have you taken a trip? Are you still riding? Just to try to keep track of our demographics. And roughly 1 out of every 5 people that we spend a weekend with buys a BMW motorcycle within a year.
That's incredible.
It tells you how much fun they're having.
Absolutely. You're doing a great job. Are you noticing in the States, because it's certainly the case here, that we're seeing less and less people on sports bikes? I think the naked bike is still the most popular bike being sold over here, but there is a massive movement onto adventure and enduro and trail bikes.
Yeah, for the last 10 years in a row, there's been a slow and steady uptick in the adventure market space. You know, in BMW speak, they look at what they call conquest sales, meaning they're selling a BMW to somebody who had another brand or another type of bike. And the two categories that we are seeing the most number of people come into the adventure space is from the sport bike crowd, but also the cruiser crowd, the Harley rider. We're seeing a lot of conversion. The common story with those guys is they are tired of riding down the road on their Harley and either seeing a dirt road that looks like it goes to a cool destination or seeing a guy on an adventure bike coming down that road and knowing that they can't go there. They're like, I want to see what's out there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was quite an interesting point a few years ago when Harley bought out the Pan America. It was clear to see then the market shift starting to happen and Harley realizing we need a piece of this market.
Well, interestingly enough, this could go in the podcast or not, but Harley Davidson contracted with us to provide lifestyle experiences to their dealers. They knew that for the most part, their dealers really, they knew nothing about the off-road world. And so we had 250 of their dealerships spend 3 days with us over the entire 2021 calendar year, just showing them what the world of adventure riding is really all about. We gave them a day of training and then we took them out on a 2-day ride to let them really get a feel for what's out there in the backcountry.
We get a lot of new off-road riders listen to the podcast and contact us. And a lot of people say, I've been riding for 20 or 30 years and I've just started to venture off-road. And it's like, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? Because I think riding off-road is so much more fun.
I could not agree more.
The only thing that makes riding on the road exciting is going fast, right? And that's a bit dangerous. I've signed up to your level 3 course. How does it work? If I'm flying in from the UK or Europe, where do I fly into?
Well, you've got 2 choices. If you come to our Southern California location, if you were to fly to New York and change planes for whatever reason, if you could go to Burbank Airport. It's not an international airport, it's a regional airport, but it's very close to our facility. Otherwise, LAX, the main hub in Los Angeles would be, I know there's flights directly from London nonstop to LAX every day. That would be the start point. We would want you to fly in time to arrive at our facility on a Friday afternoon because all of our classes run over the weekends. You would arrive on Friday sometime. We offer some extras. We have a clinic that we offer called Adventure Essentials. It's a 4-hour seminar on secondary skills, navigation, communication, tools, tire repair, some of these things. We call that an upsell if they want to learn a little more. If they're nervous, a nervous novice, we call them, we offer a Friday afternoon 4-hour get your feet wet class. So a little extra riding time. If they want to come in early and take any of our advanced offerings, they can. Otherwise, come in Friday afternoon, take an Uber, or we can arrange transportation. come on up to our place. We have a very friendly welcome process. There's always a fire burning in the fire pit, and they come in. They're greeted by my office manager. We do the registration. We will show them to their bunk or their bedroom, help them get situated. And then we have our own bar. So we invite everybody beginning 5 p.m. Come in, have a beer, hang out, tell some stories. It's a full-service bar. We offer a briefing. Orientation begins at 6:30 sharp every Friday night, and we just talk about the expectation for the weekend. We explain how things work because we are way away from the city. We have wildlife here. There's bears, there's mountain lions, there's coyotes. So we warn them that, at nighttime, if they get up to answer nature's call and they hear something rustling in the bushes, maybe it's a bear.
I've changed my mind. I'm not coming.
We've never had a bear attack. They're very shy. They actually don't want any interaction with the human. However, we had, I think you would say, a very cheeky bear came up and stole a piece of fish off of our barbecue last year. That's very rare. And we also then, on this evening orientation, we do, everybody introduces themselves and where they're from and why they're here. And just, the beginning of pulling a group together so that they know each other and they have a good time. So Friday night is all about orientation. Then the following morning, we serve breakfast. And after breakfast, then we usually do, for the introductory group, about a 45-minute talk, telling about some of the physics of why things work the way they do. And then from there, we put them on the bike. They have got about 2.5 hours in the morning to start with some of the basic exercises. Then we take a lunch break. Then they go back out for the afternoon. And the class wraps up usually around 5, and the bar opens up, and they lie about how well they rode that day. We do it all again on Sunday. And then, if they want, we offer a 2-day desert ride after every class. They get to go out to a place we have in the Mojave Desert we call Zakar. It's a 400-mile ride, 200 miles each way, and it just lets them lock in the things they learned over the weekend and at the same time have some fun. See the sights, see some of the desert, just get a feel for what adventure riding is really all about. If they do that, they come back to our main facility Tuesday afternoon and go home.
It sounds amazing, and the videos and the pictures I've seen make your part of the world look one of the best places to ride in the world.
I won't disagree with you. We have a lot of wonderful, wonderful riding here. Mountains, desert, history, the mining history of the West. This 2-day ride, we take you out to an old gold mine that you can actually walk into and look around. And it's the essence of why we do this.
How do our listeners book onto one of your either training weekends or one of your tours?
The easiest way is through our website. There is on every page of our website that is one of our experiences, whether it's a training class or a tour. There's a sign up link. All they have to do is click where it says sign up now. Like on our training website, for example, every date is listed on the right-hand side that we're running, and every date has this yellow oval around it. All you got to do is click on that date because that's a registration link. We take a small deposit with a credit card to guarantee their spot. They can expect a follow-up call from our office within 48 hours to introduce ourselves, answer questions, etc. And then there's an electronic series of things that happen. We send packing lists and confirmations and motorcycle rental confirmations and all these sorts of things.
Do people need to bring their own kit, their own boots, helmet, gloves, etc.?
Yeah, that is the one thing that we don't rent. We have 50 BMW motorcycles of every category, except 310s. We don't have any 310s, but we have 750s, 850s, 850 Adventures, 1250s, 1250 Adventures. We're getting new 1300s next week, along with the new 900, which is supposed to be a very dirt-centric bike.
Fantastic. So it's rawhyde-offroad.com, RAWHYDE-offroad.com.
That's correct. If anybody wants to call us, +1 661 993 9942, and that will get our office.
So a massive thanks to Jim for doing that. I hope that's whetted your appetite to travel out to America and do some riding over there in their vast and beautiful landscapes. It certainly has me. If you are going, give us a shout. We'll come with you. Looks great. Don't forget, get voting on the awards if you haven't already. This is in May 2024. Right, that's it. See you next time. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.